what's up? My name is Munchie. I'm a former athlete just like you or somebody you know, and this is the Wash Pod, Shootin in the Gym. Today we're going to be talking about context and perspective, and what I mean by that is, look, very simple example. I lean back here, you can see that the camera shows you what's actually behind me. When I was close here, that disappears. All we're talking about today is those two things, context and perspective. So that was more about perspective than it was about context, but the fact that I'm saying it, it's giving you the context. So anyway, before we get into it though, make sure you like and subscribe, the two things we always ask for you to do, and turn on your notifications so you can stay up on all future releases of Shootin' Gym and everything on the Wash Pod. All right, let's get to it. Peace.
With me shooting in the gym.
Person one, bro, I get up at 5 a.m. every day. Person two, bro, I get up at 9 a.m. every day, and I don't know how you do it. Chances are, if you've heard or had this conversation internally before, you know which one is you. Which one is it? Although there's a mountain of information we don't know about person one or person two, there is one key fact we do know. It's about time. But what time did each of these guys go to bed, or people, I should say? Because if person one goes to bed at 8 o'clock each night and person two goes to bed at 12 a.m., they both sleep 9 hours. But taking at face value without any additional context or applying our own biased perspective, chances are you heard one time is early and the other time is late. Why? Context and perspective. CP time. While person one gets up earlier, if we measure the start of the end of the day by the literal meaning marking the official beginning of the day at 12 a.m., their relative 24-hour distribution of sleep versus awake time is the same. Same 24. See, because they both sleep 9 hours and are awake 15 hours. Now, you might be sitting here thinking, well, duh, bro, I can do simple math. And yes, I get it. But it was less an attempt to exercise your arithmetic muscles and mathematical skills, and more an attempt to tease out how many conversations go within the mind of a competitive person like me or like us, or like ourselves, the old and washed up athletes. Because let's be real, if we hear another athlete, and maybe even a former athlete at this point, say something like that, naturally we tend to ingest, digest, and regurgitate back to our internal selves what that means or may mean about us. And I'd argue that's just the athlete's nature. See, the simple example I chose to use about why comparison without context can lead us to false belief and conclusion about ourselves and our status within our own community. When we don't frame things the proper way, it invites negative thinking about something where there is actually no basis for any sort of negative critiquing of ourselves. Bruh, you right. Keep going. Beyond even just simple contextual clarification, what we did in defining the statements based on an attempt to define early versus late in terms of when person one or person two went to sleep or woke up in the morning was also peak at the next layer below context, which I believe to be perspective. Because our perspective on facts or perceived facts matter, because perspective, like the view of an action or gameplay scenario in the middle of any team sport, often decides what an individual player or athlete will, could, would, or should see, hear, feel, do, or even believe. For example, as a former basketball player turned basketball coach in my right dope age of 36, I used to hoop, yeah. D up. All right. I now have a completely different perspective on what it means to be a basketball player, assessor, coach, and even parent. Now, while I was a cerebral player by nature and by position, I used to play the point. Yeah, I was cold. Having always played the point guard position for my entire competitive career, I found myself seeing so much more about the layers of the game, how it's played, and how an individual prepares and practices their routines, their habits, the synchronization, the communication, the beauty of the game. Now that I'm a coach, because now my perspective has changed. Or once all I saw was one or more players with or without the ball, kind of operating in a silo within individual lanes. You know, you got your center, got your shooting guard, small forward, power forward, PG. Now, having coached the game at multiple levels within the same program for multiple years, it's allowed me to see the beauty of possibility and the fragility and synchronicity, the timing, the orchestration and luck and just outright chaos that just exists inherently in the game and in life in general. When viewed, reviewed, I said reviewed from different perspectives. Okay, staying on the basketball thread a bit, let's take this play from an Instagram highlight I found of a clip from an LA Clippers game where they're playing the Portland Trail Blazers, for instance. I came across this post on Instagram. You know, it was intended to really highlight the exceptional knowledge of the current Clippers head coach, Tyronn Lue. And if you're my age, you kind of know a different memory of Tyronn Lue. Sorry, I had to.
Bothered by Lue. Iverson. How about that? Steps over Tyronn Lue.
Shout out AI. For the folks listening on audio only, I'll do my best to describe what the play is in my best way possible. Now, I'm fully aware that most of my former basketball players are basketball fans that really understand the game. Won't have an issue with understanding this. But for my not so basketball savvy folks, hey, we'll slow it down for you. All right, we'll slow it down.
In tonight's game against the Trailblazers, Clippers head coach Ty Lue showed once again why he's one of the best X's and O's coaches in the business and great at adjustments. Here they run the initial play, an Iverson outset for Paul George, ends up hitting an isolation shot over Dennis Smith Jr. Now watch how the Trailblazers defend this initial play, and we'll see why the next counter is so brilliant. Now we're going to look at here and watch Kennard cut over the top and an Iverson cut to the opposite wing of Paul George and Hartenstein. Hartenstein's then going to set a little out screen for Paul George to cut to the empty side of the floor. Watch how Nurkic steps out and either tags or bumps Paul George initially to prevent an easier pass, so Paul George has to catch it a little bit further out. But for a brief second, we can see an initial opening for Hartenstein in the lane. Paul George catches it, ends up scoring in the isolation anyways, but after the flagrant foul from Nurkic, it gave Ty Lue a free timeout. During this free timeout in the review, he used this time to draw up a play and explain to Morris and Hartenstein what they want to see for the counter, because he noticed the same thing we can see on the film, that Hartenstein was wide open. So what they do is come up and run the exact same play with Kennard cutting over the top from wing to wing in the Iverson cut. Then they look like they're going to run the Iverson out action for Paul George. But what happens is Hartenstein breaks free for a wide open dunk because Ty Lue noticed that Nurkic was going to cheat out on this cut from Paul George, the same way they just defended it. And then at the same time, he has Morris cut up to the wing while Hartenstein is going into that out screen for Paul George, taking away any help inside the lane from Larry Nance, which results in the wide open dunk for Hartenstein. What a brilliant play call and adjustment from Ty Lue, as you can see him celebrating here to get the wide open dunk and essentially seal off the game against the Trailblazers.
So in a basic sense, the Clippers ran a play that called for their best scorer to run across the court, receive 2 picks or screens, or whatever makes the most sense to you as to what a pick or screen means. It basically is just purposely colliding with the defensive player in an attempt to create space between the defender and the offensive player. That allowed this Clippers' best scorer, in this case Paul George, Kawhi fans. I'm not going there. I know it's a sore subject. I get it. To get open for a look at the basket. Now, on the first play, Paul knocks down an open look. He comes off both screens, faces the basket, just knocks it down. But the Portland Trail Blazers, in the process of defending that play, committed a flagrant foul away from the ball, allowing the Clippers to get the ball back again. Significant. But more significant is 2 things about these series of events related to the 2 topics we've already touched on briefly. Just to recap for my not so quick folks. Context and perspective. Why? Well, for context, the flagrant foul not only gave the Clippers the ball back, but when a flagrant fouls are called or committed, the opposing team gets to have a player shoot a free throw. Now, depending on who your team is and who got fouled, this may or may not be a good thing for you or your team. Sorry, Bron fans. I'm one of them. Bro, what's up with your free throws? Just saying.
You know, to still have this athleticism to expand your game and become a much better 3-point shooter, but he's got to get better at that. You can't airball a free throw.
And while that player shoots the free throw, each team's other players are usually instructed to proceed to their respective benches. Now, the contextual part that makes this interesting from a couple perspectives, as a former player, you understand the significance of being able to maximize this time to gather your team and communicate ideas, thoughts, give some fist bumps, daps, get some water, whatever, without having to use official timeout. Now, as a coach, you jump at any chance you can get that stops the clock and allows you to kind of convey valuable information, all that knowledge you have in your head at a time where you don't have to expend timeouts. And the Clippers coach, Ty Lue, was on point by doing just that. Now, what's shown in the clip that you can't hear described is what Clippers coach Ty Lue recognized he had a chance to do during this free timeout for his team, based on his perspective and the resulting actions of the team during the play they just ran. See, Ty recognized from what perspective the other team viewed the play that they just ran. Now, whether that was due to a strategic plan from the other coach or not sure what his name is, kind of irrelevant. It's okay. The other team's perspective of the intent of the play allowed him to recognize how the same play could be used to translate seemingly the same message, leading to the same actions and reactions from the other team. Now, only this time, he instructed his own team to shift their perspective away from the primary focus of the defense, their best scorers, to the player the defense showed him would be open, simply because of their perspective on who they thought the play was being run for. So the clip ends with the Clippers. See what I did there? High five to all my dads out there. Pow. We got. Running the same play, but this time passing the ball to another player who was left open by the shifting defense in the same manner as the first time they ran the play for an easy dunk. It's the dunk symbol. Dunk, dunk, dunk. I'm not a dancer, sorry. So you might be asking, bruh, what is the damn point of all this? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. For proper context. See, the theme of this podcast plays on the idea of taking time out to take a time out, to gain a different perspective on our common perspectives as former athletes, while at the same time, a timeout from giving one former athlete's perspective on the prospects of different topics and their ability to translate both sports to life and life to sport. And more contextually, as former athletes, our perspective on life is more competitively contextualized than we know it if we pay attention. See, for us, in many ways, our battle is and will always be in here. It's within ourselves. Old is dope, shameless plug, yes, all day long. And getting out of our own heads through hearing the inner thoughts of another is sometimes the best perspective we can both take in and offer. The more we do it, the better we get at it. And the better we get at it, the more we do it. See the connection? If you stay with me this long, I applaud you. Because I know I'm well past the point in your head where the referees threaten to start playing a game, or you're just going to turn the phone, or maybe you have to scroll away without the team being on the floor, aka, bruh, wrap this up. Okay, so what's the point? Well, for us as former athletes looking to find ways towards and through the competition that seems invisible in life without two things: context, perspective. What I hope to get across in this simple yet profound, bruh, just stop already. Example, yes, I did just use the word profound in reference to the LA Clippers. Is the point that even in the simplest of instances in life or examples in life, with the proper context and perspective, or multiple chances at taking a different perspective on things, we also open up the opportunity to get wide open looks at whatever the rim, goal line, finish line, target, goal, whatever sporting object you can think of may be for us today, tomorrow, and from here on out. Without context and perspective, we can't see anything new in the mundane or simple. That's the point. Why is this important? Because we as former athletes looking to define the prime of our life story by something other than our competitive athletic career. Nice plug, bro. Choose to add context to life through taking that perspective. What perspective, you might ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked. The perspective that life is sport and that sport is life. That a score is kept in every area of life, whether we understand how to read the rules or not. That's physically, mentally, socially and relationally, and financially. You just have to know how the score works and have to care to not stop keeping it. As a competitor, you're always doing it anyway, so you can stop sizing me up right now. Yes, bro, you're better than me. Football, basketball, baseball, there's somebody watching that was a better player than me, but that's not what this is about. I know you can't turn that off in your head. Just stay with me. Thanks for listening. Just saying. Thanks for listening. Odor's dope, but only if you make it so. Thanks for shooting in the gym with me. Thanks for checking out Shootin in the Gym. This is a portion of our podcast segments where we're looking for feedback from you. Yep, you watching this, checking out. We need feedback. We can't make this thing or any of this or any of the Wash Pod anything that it should be without feedback from you, former athletes just like us, or people that you know that are former athletes. So before you depart, make sure you do two things. One, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and turn on your notifications to make sure you get notified of all future releases of the Wash Pod, especially Shootin in the Gym. But then two, go to oldandwashedup.com/washpod. The link will be in the description. Again, that's oldandwashedup.com/washpod. We will have that link in the description. On there, you will see some directions to click a widget that we have set up for you to record audio and give us some feedback. That could be questions, comments, hopefully no profanity. But getting feedback from you will help us make this better in the future. And our intention is to include any sort of questions, comments, or suggestions in future releases on the Wash Pod. Again, this has been Shootin in the Gym. Appreciate your time. Looking forward to hearing from you in advance. Peace.
With me shooting in the gym.